I want to give extension and honors to the brother Kobe Bryant, who has passed, or who they say has passed. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's more. This one is actually true due to the fact that not only was it him, but his daughter, was also untimely taken away due to the circumstances as they may be. And so I don't want to, be one of these people speculating on things like that and what these things mean. However, I've been around for a long time, and in doing the knowledge to how these things play out, I see that there is definitely a circumstance by which our people are being systematically wiped out. But when we say our people, we also have to do the knowledge to who that is. And we have been taught through circumstances that exist that um, these things are supposed to be somehow coincidental, when we have to remember that the enemy that we deal with has no structural capacity for empathy of any kind. And so in the process of having such a circumstance happen at such a precarious time, during the fact that this is all happening also during the Democratic side of the impeachment, testimonies coming out, you got to understand that this is not something that just happens. You understand? Um, Especially, like I said, the timing of these things and what they represent. It just so happens to be this is the first day of the year of the rat, Chinese year of the rat. And it's also the time in which, what's his name? LeBron, who is one of the other members or colleagues of his fraternity, have reached a certain pinnacle of success that has not been um, surpassed by anybody other than Kobe. So the fact that there was another Catholic, right? So you have to understand, Kobe was born in Italy, which makes him Roman, which is why he married a Roman Jesuit chick. This chick's grandfather was one of the high members in the Vatican structure. If I'm not mistaken, though, he was also one of the people implicated. His order was one of the orders implicated in some of the sex stuff. So there's that. There's also the fact that, he only had daughters. So being that his mother is Roman, or the mother was Roman, all of the daughters basically are Roman too. Thus, they have to be married to Romans of authority, according to the type of draconian law that they're under. So basically, his line is bleached out. So this is an example of what and how the Moors fell. Now, the other thing, this was a cartoon that came out in 2017 that illustrated the helicopter crash. As you can see, here he is in the helicopter with his two, right? And his head in between the two pillars, right? With the purple and green. And then here go the kids that found him. You know what I'm saying? So this was in 2017. 1 and 7 is 8. 8 was his number. 8 is also Saturn. Saturn is also, the father or the goat. Here's the actual um, situation. Here's the joint as how it happened. As you can see in the plane crash, and the thing was thing. And it happened to be a helicopter. So this type of predictive programming is very interesting because it also happened during what they call the Feast of the Vanities, or the Bonfire of the Vanities, which is also a festival that happens on the same day that these people, Jay-Z and the rest of these people, had their little post Grammy party. Now, this is the 8th year, I think, since the Whitney Houston killing at the Grammy party. So as you can see, this is all a cyclical operation. Okay. And yes, he was in a Sikorsky, right, which is basically like a downgraded version of a Black Hawk. You know what I'm saying? Which is again the 17th year of the rate. This is 8. So all these 8s adding up. So this also happened as, like I said, he passed the torch to your homeboy, and now he is the undisputed king, another Catholic, you know what I'm saying, who sits at the table of Rome. However, this is how Rome rules its state, through the interest in its gladiators. You understand? So the gladiatorius is what is actually at play here, and the unfortunate circumstances, him going down in a place no other than the Death Valley. Now, Death Valley is home to many poisonous snakes, and it also happens to be Mauritania. Now, in your own time of research, what you can do just for fun is research how many areas are within a 100-mile distance, how many military bases are in a 100-mile distance of where his plane crashed. And you will see the way that the coordinates work out, it was happened in what the military referred to as a kill box, meaning this is where they heard the target into a certain place and then hit it with mad crossfire, like what they said they kind of did with Oswald. You know what I'm saying? So again, I wasn't there. I'm not an expert. I'm not doing that. I'm just doing this based on the divine and the obvious research of this ritual that keeps happening uh, at this time. And this time last year, it was Ermias' turn. Remember? Remember? So what we can see is no matter how, also he was dealing with prison reform, right? He was getting into that. And he was one of the sponsors, or one of the people who was behind the new movie with Michael B. Jordan, dealing with the guy that had to get out of jail because they had him locked down with the Mississippi thing. Okay, so they can't have that. They can't. This can't. It can't happen. So advantageously, this works towards the benefit of whoever. All I'm saying is the way that the numbers and everything added up with how it was done, it definitely looks like it happened. Also, that area is close to a place called Moab, right? Also, you have to remember that he's a long-term asset. He was long-term. He was raised into this. His father's a military brat. You know what I'm saying? He was born in Rome. He was born in Italy. You know what I mean? Everybody always talked about different languages he spoke and how this, that, and all that's great. But what I'm also saying is that based upon how they have him positioned, he was definitely groomed to be in the position that he was in, as any knight of Rome would be. You understand? But when you get to a certain age, I think, and especially in that society, you get to a point where it's very hard for you to toe the line to certain things you see, especially the older your children get. Yes, he was yes indeed, he was on the exotic map. He was whose ambassador? Whose ambassador was he? You saying ambassador for? Oh yeah, you talking about the Vatican Church? Basically, because he always attended the mass and all that. So all I'm saying is that this period, or the period in which that type of heraldry came about, is what these Moors locked themselves into once they became down with the pale gods of Europe. The pale gods of Europe didn't necessarily just mean the white Jesus. It meant those who were going to toe the new line of where creation began and how they were going to remake the world in the image of Christ, the Christ that they could control. You understand? Now, one of the other things that's interesting, you got to know, whenever they start talking to you about situations of people like this getting taken out, there's always things like this that pop up. Kobe Bryant accuses pharma company of using illegal substances in Black Mamba lawsuit. Kobe Bryant and his legal team are going with a new game plan in their battle against high-tech pharmaceuticals for the right to use the name Black Mamba. Both parties have been fighting in court since 2017 over the name. High-tech failed to trademark in 2015. It's in line for its line of diet pills called Black Mamba Hyper Rush. See this? It's a copyright case, very big. So it's always when these brothers get in situations, they wind up in situations where, you know what I mean? Corporations is not trying to give up because at the same time they work for the corporation. You understand? You can't be against it and for it at the same time. And so all of this that we see, and this need for us to be caught up in Europe and how the Europeans do their thing is based upon not only the false history, but the tradition by which the European Moors would raise up the Caucasoid ones as feudal knights under them. And then they being Christian, but really under the jurisdiction of Islam, see the crescent in the black joint. These are the ones that was knighted and went out to fight against us because there was Europeans, Moors, Europeans, right? Our cousins or distant relatives or whatever, they basically did it. Not only was it a distraction for the impeachment, but it's also a distraction for the situation that's happening with the coronavirus. Because in the end, anybody that's Catholic, anybody that goes to church on Sunday is a Catholic. You understand? Anybody that venerates God on the Sunday, because Sunday is really Monday. The holy night is Friday. Saturday is the Sabbath, technically. Sunday is the first day. None of it's real. But what I'm saying is the narrative is being pumped. You and I know that. But it's so not real that the mind of these people is to make it such. That's what we, I think, have to wrap our minds around what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the kings of spin. However it goes, they want us to remember things from their perspective. So forever, we came up when we got knowledge of self and Egyptology and all of that, right? We went and we would always do the knowledge to Horus, Heru. And because we believe that the Egypt that they was talking about was over there, that was somehow relevant to us being taken from over there, because that helped build the narrative of us being taken. You understand? And us being exported, i.e., not being in our natural habitat, right? So if that's the narrative, then that means everything that we are is based in somebody else, right? And so that idea, that narrative, that conclaved ideology that makes something foreign better, right? That was instituted in these years in which the Moors over here fell as liege subjects to the European Moorish clans that then got them to adopt their version of law. And then now that they were under that, they then worked with them to displace us. Got it? So in reality, we have been taught by all these different so-called scholars, and they always bringing us to the pyramids and showing us the dynamic aspect of it and all of that, and that's dope. But why is it that then when you're talking to me about Heru, right, which is, okay, this is Heru, right, which means that Heru, who is a symbolic aspect of the falcon god, right, who is where we get the word Horus, right? Which is where we get the word hours from. Horus, hour, um, um, Horatio, right? All of these words, hero, right? So this is that. But this right here is not in Egypt. This falcon is not found in Egypt over there. This falcon is found over here. You understand? These types of falcons are only here. You dig what I'm saying? So the horizon is the sun. So when they put the sun around this in those pyramids over there, that was them giving veneration to where this true ideal or this true emirate was actually founded, by where the sun set. And the sun set where? The west. But back then the west was east and the east was west. So it's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with all of those so-called totemic animals. You understand? So we're talking about a kingdom or a unified state that existed in a that existed in a perpetual state of international or intercontinental trade with the descendants of its empire. Somebody sent me this in the email, and it exactly proves and shows what I'm saying. We keep looking at somebody else, and we right here. So as great as somebody like the brother is or was, in the end, what the difference between him and the situation was the circumstances that he found him in, based upon him being born into the Roman legions. You understand? So this is, again, is where they're getting it from. This is where it is originally. This is where they're taking it to. So this is the original, and I guess they refined it to this level, which is dope. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is where the original was, and you see the definition. But remember, most of the Egyptians did not wear beards and did not have beards naturally. Who had the beards? The ones that was over here. Islam? Exactly. The barbarians, those with the beards, the Berbers, right? And where they from? They from over here. So again, the question becomes, how is it that nobody refined the truth and let us know that we was right where we were supposed to be at? The only reason why they wouldn't tell us is because, one, they didn't want us to know. Why wouldn't you want me to know? Everybody's into well, what I was also saying with that. Yeah, the same thing with the gladiatory system. The gladiatory system was based on bread and circus. So everybody that was down with it, basically, in order to maintain a situation, you had to provide entertainment for the circus. So the people would be starving, they're ready to riot. But as soon as they came into the gladiatory arena, everything was all good because everybody got free bread. So you could sit there, and as you ate the free bread and drank the free water that you couldn't get outside the gladiatory, it would force people to basically sell their children into the gladiatory system. And then, and it didn't stop after Christianity was adopted. Now think about this: if the original Africans came from India, right, and the original Ethiopians that came and moved the capital from Lalibela to Axum, they were part Indian. Which may explain why all of the Vedics and everything had to be rewritten and put into what they call Coptic. But the Coptic was a manifestation of the Macedonian, what was left over from the Macedonian, which again was a minor version of what we now today call Greek. And all of these were Sabaeans, right? The Sabaeans, the Queen of Sheba in them, was not from Africa. She was from where? in the stories. Right. Arabia, which at the time was called Havilah. So it wasn't even Arabia. The Romans called it Arabia Felix. But essentially, she wasn't even from there. So when they make Solomon white and they make her black, they flipping the ritual on you, because in actuality, Solomon would have to be black. But I don't even think it was actually that Solomon. I think Solomon was the great seal that epoch of kings was under. And one of the greatest of which will call him Solomon, but was most likely like an Egyptian name or something else. He decided to extend his dominion by taking wives from all of the other ancient nations from the dead. Got them pregnant, sent the kid back, and now that kid rules those areas and brought all of that under the so-called Hebrew. But remember, Hebrew comes out of what? Hebrew comes out of what? Exactly. Canaan, Phoenician, phonetic, photonic. Yes, all of that. So it still goes back to us. So you see, Rome is always almost the alternate version of how the original states and stuff was. So this is from the book, I think it's When Rocks Cry Out. I have seen ancient records that unveiled the world's most explosive secret. Egypt had crossed the Atlantic Sea in ships more than 10,000 years before the time of Christ. They had built the world's largest cities in South and Central America and in Mexico. They had united those city-states into a nation that stretched from Brazil in South America to Mexico and into Africa. I had broken the seal on the forbidden histories. I had found the writings that told how Egypt had been built in its most powerful empire, and it happened to be in the Americas. Three of the world's most powerful religions came out of Egypt, and now the most fearful secret was uncovered. So once they broke up the pantheon of science that we had, and then created the little schools to do that, they designated places in the world where they were going to set up this new thing. So, okay, you guys are Catholics, you're going to be in Rome. Okay, this now, the Cathars, we killed all of them. The Albigenses, we killed all of them. We're going to take that knowledge, and then we're going to be Catholics now. Okay, you guys are into this or whatever, so that's going to be this type of Christianism. And that's when all the different Christian religions started popping up, the different versions. This book, as well as the other book I showed last week, The End of Barbarian Rule in the American Continent, get that. This book specifically gets into Barbary in America. I'll read a quote from it. You see what I'm talking about? Get this book, Virginia Barbary in the Shunes, Tennessee. This all gets into that. The Alamo, like I said, was built by the Almohad, the Almoravid. Texas, or what they call Tejas, is really old Mauritania. You know what I'm saying? See, they took the minarets down and just left this, because this is a symbol. This is what established the republic. The first American republic was established by Carthage and them, Hannibal Bay and them, back in 323 BC. So the idea of an American continent with a kingdom and different kingdoms in it progressed over centuries. So you had ancient structures built on top of ancient structures built on top of ancient structures. So to say that the people who built the mounds and the pyramids, so if you look at it like this, let's say, look, if the Horus thing is from Egypt, right? Then how come these are two steles? The stele on the right is going back to Hannibal Bay. I found that over here. And then the lithograph on the left is where the so-called Egyptians got this thing from. Here go. See Hannibal in there with the elephant. Because the American elephants was huge over here. We proved that in the book Morocco as it is. And in that book that was written in the 1800s, before the prophet was born, they referred to the Moors in that book as that from America as Moorish Americans. You hear what I'm saying? They was referring to Moors in America as Moorish Americans prior to what we prior to the prophet taking Moorish Americans and classifying it back to that. Yes, indeed, under the Sultan of America. So as you can see here go the whole Heru. See, with the crook and the flail, but this is from Phoenicia. See, this is the Phoenician horse. So when we speak of ancient Egypt, what we really and post-flood Atlantis, we're really talking about Phoenicia and the states that was around that, like Phoenicia, the Phrygians, the Fomorians, the Tuath, and then what they call the Sea Kings. These is all us from over here going back and forth. This predates all so-called Native American teepee wigwam people. Them people was basically vagrants. Those were the leftover people who came here and had no way of life, no civilization. This, when you read the story of, anybody heard of Spartacus? Anybody heard of Spartacus? Okay, well, after Spartacus, there was one more big rebellion, and that was a guy named Vercingetorix. Vercingetorix was the last king of a place called Artaveni. And Artaveni was a low-key Latinum Etruscan colony that was still holding out from the Romans, who adopted the Latinum culture and basically wiped them out. Yes, so this is Vercingetorix, though. As you can see, that's obviously a melanated man with locks. So this is what I'm saying. The Romans that we've been going against and we was back and forth is us. The only difference is they would deal more with the Caucasian slaves and how they was going to interbreed them or whatever into their family. Islam. But when you see the movies about Vercingetorix, who's playing him? Caucasian dudes, right? You remember that movie World Trade Center by with what's his name? Nicolas Cage. Yeah, he's playing right in that movie World Trade Center. The guy that Nick Cage is playing in real life was a black man. The guy that actually did all the stuff he did in the movie that he's playing was actually a black man in real life. So you see what I'm saying? How they do it. So if they did that with that, and that just happened, that 9/11 shit just happened. So imagine what they doing with everything else. Half of the people that they telling you, I think 90% of the people they telling us was white was really the opposite. Look, this is how we know. This is us in Mexico. Now you just read how we set up the empire. Phoenicia was all over the place, and we Moors was rocking it, right? So this is another image that ties this all the way up. Look, these are Moors in New Orleans. These are Moors in Nicaragua, as well as Nicaragua. You see? Same face that you see on the calendar, because this is the true Americans. We are the truest Americans because we actually had a culture that existed here prior to everybody else. This is more examples of it. So we went from, you had the mound cultures and then all of that. And as we move progressively, let's say from the late 1300s, 1400s up into the 1700s, that's when all of these structures that we see today that they don't bury and act like we don't have nothing to do with was set up like this. And because of all of the displacement and the struggles and everything we was going through, it was all refurbished. So when we say the Egyptians built these things, we're saying that the descendants of those Egyptians that was already here basically refined this society architecturally to reflect that. And then all of the dominions in the world that was down with that all carried up the same so-called architecture. And that architecture was erroneously renamed as Roman architecture, you see, or Greek architecture after Reconstruction by specifically Thaddeus Stevens and Horace Greeley. Yes. And anyone that was not going to fall into the new lines of what that perfection was going to be then became renegade. See? Here's another one. Now, these are the same structures that when you look in the back of pictures of Montezuma meeting Cortez and all of that stuff, you'll see these guys there. You'll see these buildings in behind in the paintings. You'll see these structures. So again, where all the people at? Who's taking a picture? Where's all the people at? And how is this different from that? See how these buildings look bombed out, almost like they just rebuilt them and they just repaved all of this. But again, where's the people? And why haven't they built anything like that since? See, these arenas where they had these things, all of these expositions happened after the Louisiana Purchase. After now they had access westward, and now all of the kingdoms in old Paris and old France and all that stuff that the Washingtons of these Moors was holding out on, they had to shut down and repurpose. Just the other one. And so, to keep these secrets, architectural guilds were created, and all of the old plans of these old buildings that was left by these masters, by these Moorish architects that existed all the way from the times of Granada, if not before then, were then taken and shared, and then they were now distributed at these different places like Ingolstadt University, Oxford, Yale. See what I'm saying? So now you got to be a part of the guild. You got to be a part of the brotherhood in order to know how and where this stuff really came from, because they can't build it again. You understand? Because they didn't build it in the first place. They just came out of the Dark Ages at the end of the 18th century, really. So now they're coming into a world in which now the first ones out was the ones that was the knights and had been come from families of knights and these people that had come up in these wars of Barbary between these different warring factions. But it's a war of contrition between families, of which these things just came up. And so they started to use them to disinherit each other by proxy. Don't believe me, people. This is what's. So we got the White House, you know what I'm saying? And then you got the real joint that's under that is built on top of. You see? See how they just put this is the street now. All of this is under. This just keeps going down. You see that? Look, what's that? These are whole apartments. These are whole areas. Look, this is what it's built on. They just supplanted this on top of that. Yes. But look at the architecture. This is Egyptian. When you say Egyptian, look at the color of the stone. They dug this out and just found this here on a humble. No, Washington D.C. is built on top of old Morocco. Don't these look like the buildings you see in Egypt, in Morocco right now? Look right here. Look. Don't you see these in these structures with the stone, with the mud brick, with the stones coming out in Mali and places like that? Timbuktu? Am I bugging? So what's that doing under the White House? But it explains why that's the capital now. You understand? Because the old capital was back down in South America, which is why the Vatican patterned itself after that look. And all world cultures have that. Look, here's another picture. Same thing. How can they talk about this? They quick to tell you they found an African burial ground, but they ain't talking about the city that they built on top of this thing. And you mean to tell me there's no way that they can get from down here into all of this? Come on, man. Remember, Washington said that the old government sought to replace its government and found a new one, right? Exactly. And Bembe designed it, right? Him and the Frenchman Ellicott. But they said Ellicott couldn't handle it, so he dropped out, and Bembe finished it all in his head, and then told Washington and them. So we was wilding. We had, okay, anybody remember in Babylon, you'll see this image of Marduk, who again is a black man in the fez, riding the holy chariot. This is really a symbol of Enoch, right? You'll see this in ancient so-called Egypt as the sun disk with the wings of Ma'at, right? You'll also see this on the United States dollar with the eagle. Only thing is the eagle's head here, right? And these are the two claws in which is holding the arrows and the olive branches, correct? But Pete Game, that's this. That's an original man in this. These were found over here. These things we call planes and all that, that's these things. These was the planes. See this pilot right here? Well, you have one here, and then you would have one here in the nose. This was the symbol that you see Alexander the Great reaching to in the Alexander the Great movie with Colin Farrell. Yeah, we have flying devices, all this stuff. That's why all the technology advances came from here, because they just repurposed stuff and figured stuff out after they had a chance to do our thing. So they couldn't allow us to read. They couldn't allow us to write. They couldn't allow us to do certain things after these territories were conquered, because then we would know what's up. And like I said, they didn't know how to use radium. They didn't know how to use the ether technology, none of that stuff. That's why they would go in these castles and go in there and then just take wood. They couldn't power the architecture, so they would just take wood and then throw it into the fireplace and still freeze to death. Because there was, or worse, they would die of carbon monoxide poisoning because they wouldn't know how to open up the flume. Because when you use the radium, it would heat up the stone, the type of stone they made, and would heat the whole thing. That's why in some of these old paintings with these Moors, like I'll show you. Oh no, one where he's inside. Look at this. Here's the Moor educating the Jew that he owns as a subscriber in the papers or here in head of state or whatever. Where's the light coming from? From this side of the room, right? And by the height of it, it's probably, you know what I mean, where the light is hitting him in the structure. because everything was open. You don't see a lot of torches in these types of pictures. For instance, here is a map on your right of Granada, and on the coast of Granada is a place that you would know. And I'll read the other side. See that? So here's Granada, and what did they call New Granada, the Viceroyalty of Granada, right? But what's that? That's Cartagena, right? Cartagena is Carthage. And they said that Carthage was situated on the coast, correct? Correct? Right. And right below Carthage or Cartagena is what? See it? Look, this place is called Moracote. This place is called Moracote. This place is called Cortago, right? This one is called Maracay. Okay. So this is from the book Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 2. When Aeneas Servilius, afterwards Pius II, made an adventurous visit to Scotland, he found that most of the houses on the Scottish borders were not even huts, as they were generally small breastwork composed of mud or such materials as were at hand, and raised to a sufficient height by 3 or 4 poles meeting at a top, and covered with straw and turf, while those of the villages were little better and had no door but the cow's hide suspended at the entrance. In short, these turf-built wigwams are dwellings of the Scotia-Picts or the Egyptian Moors. Whether we look at these people in their latest individual form, or as they appeared in the Hebrides in the last century, or at an earlier date than that. That's the time that Queen Scotia went from Egypt and all that. When they formed the important political entity in the British Isles, which their civilized and hybrid descendants still do, and their dwellings form of one of the very numerous links that unite the painted Moors of Scotland and a certain kindred races of Europe, Asia, and America. Compare the English cottage also to the Gaelic coat or cottage in the coast or petticoat. The radical meaning in this word seems to be something that covers or encloses. In its Gaelic sense of covering for the body, found among the Moors of North America, as for example, the machicota, or the principal female garment referred to by Longfellow in the note in Hiawatha, which word seems as if it had once been in the petticoat, or the principal garment, or the undergarment. They are also called Indian words, which are still to be found in English dictionaries. So this is why we can be Moorish Americans or Moors in any part of the world, because essentially what it's saying is that we are the first peoples of those places to bring civilization and manifest our will based upon our ancient connection to whatever part of that place or that land was at or is at. You know what I'm saying? It just means dark people made first. Because remember, Allah breathed his breath into the mud, as the story goes. So we are the only ones that have the independent breath that created the soul. And that's why we're bound together by the creed. But those of us that was born outside of that creed have a different understanding. You understand? Because a lot of Moors started to invite these people into their families. Again, showing a connection to us and the ancient Britons. And the Moors of our British Indians, also remembered as Moors. These are the Delawares, the Lenapes, all of the Moors in New England. Therefore, the gross is virtually telling us that all companies, large companies of Moors, all black people, roamed up and down the. Yeah, this one wanted to take. I just threw it to you. Oh no, that was yours. Rather 100 years ago, and taking very considerable contributions from the farming classes and others, besides being possessed of many fierce aggressive qualities. And these Moors at the time, at quite recent period, had not relinquished the custom that distinguished those black people against whom Caesar fought. So you see, at one time, all the Moors was together, and then there was something happened, and then these Moors started to be referred to by those Moors as black because they was down with Caesar, right? Hmm. Here we go. So this is an excerpt from that book that I was telling you about. And then on your left is a plaque that basically lets you know where this was in California as well, or where Barbary, or what Barbary was or is. I introduce these comparisons in order to bring home to your minds as near as possible that the precise position of character of the territory which was set the evil of I am about to describe, it might be worthy of inquiry, why Christian slavery, banished at last from Europe, banished also from that part of this hemisphere, meaning the European side of this Western hemisphere, right? We stopped importing white slaves, should have entrenched itself in both hemispheres between the same parallels of latitude, so that Virginia, Carolina, Mississippi, and Texas should be the American equivalent complement to Morocco, Algiers, Tripoli, and Tunis. Perhaps the common peculiarities of the climate breeding in indolence, lassitude, and selfishness, meaning that within that whole strata between Virginia here and Morocco all the way over here to then the Kingdom of Morocco all the way over there represented how far the dominion of Barbary really went. And this right here is the Barbary trail that they would follow after they brought the ships in to go and steal the gold. See the minaret at the top that they buried? That's a buried minaret or a buried castle. See that? That's where the gold rush went down, right? Look, buried in the flood or whatever. And now they're going through and getting all the gold that they can get. But why would they call the California coast the Barbary Coast? Why would they do that? Exactly. And they're showing northeast of the coast, right, Mo? And then look, this is the sign of what? That's the sign of the Order of Dumas. But it is also the symbol of the Habsburg legions that fell under the jurisdiction of Rome. That's the symbol on the saints' uniform. So when these people talking about this ain't Morocco, this ain't Al Maghreb Al Aqsa, the Indians was here first. All this, everything we've been building on is the opposite of that. But when they have made us worship the foreign idolatry, the pale gods of Europe, you see, they got us still checking for them. They still got us thinking it's all over there. We bugging. The first book written in Islamic law was written in 1770 by Frederick Douglass's father, Bilal Ali Muhammad. Excuse me, his grandfather, Bilal Ali Muhammad, in 1770 in the Sapelo Island, Georgia. Look it up. He wrote the first extant book of Islamic law prior to 1857. There's Moors all up and down America. We've been here. On the 17th floor of the Washington Monument is an inscription from the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Medisi. Abdul Mesid. And it's inscribed as a plaque, and it was a poem, and it says, as to strengthen the friendship between our two countries, over 150 years have passed since the words were carved into the marble. And it's right there on the 17th floor, carved into the Washington Monument. The Turkish Sultan. Now, Tunis on the exotic map in the United States is where? Anybody got one? Andy? When you look on the exotic map, where's Tunis? Exactly. It's in Canada, right? Now, isn't it funny? Let me pull it up. Now, isn't it funny? The so-called royals is running to Canada, right? Ain't that where they going? Right. But yo, peep game though. This is the president of Canada today, Trudeau, who they say low key is Castro's son on the low. That's what they saying. Right? But look, here he go. Now remember, Harry is a Nazi. Right? Here he go. Look what he dressed as though. That's him in the middle. But you see, he not just as a slave. He not just as no Sambo. You see, he dressed as a Moor. So he's in what they call in England the Gollywog ritual, or when you see them all dressed up as Moors during that time of year, because they're celebrating you not existing and them being able to be you. You understand? But wait, this is him. See, they be hating. They be wanting you to make stuff like this small so you can't blow them up. I'm gonna get him. This is him on safari when he was a kid with his family. Now, this is what I mean about institutional racism and how institutional racists, long-term white supremacists, long-term Luciferian type niggas get put in positions of power. And how you know it's all bullshit, because if Harry is a Nazi and this dude is always in blackface and stuff, this is how he grew up. This is what they do. This is him as a boy in Kenya. This is him right here. See what they doing? He grew up like this. You understand? Yeah. That's my point. This is how he see you. This is how they see us. And the so-called Africans have been working with them to do it. They are rolling like this. This is the president of Kenya. I mean, the future president of Canada. Amor, come in. Don't you ever let me see you do anything like this. Mm-hmm. You never have no people, especially no boys like this, mm-hmm. on your back like that. You understand? Mm-hmm. Ever. Mm-hmm. You understand? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's now cipher. So you mean to tell me this person is not a racist? You mean to tell me Harry is not a racist? Harry, this is his man? As much as France and the French nation that has done to destroy the Africans, there should be no reason why I should be able to read Time magazine and read about how if I want to go have sex with a little boy, Gambia is the best place in Africa to go. That means that that's part of the tourism attraction. That means that the government's getting money off that. That means they're doing that to their own people. You understand? That's why, as long as situations like this exist, the bond between these two beings exists, humanity will always be enslaved. Because it's them. When you think of racism, look like this. When you think of interracial relationships, the first thing you think about is a black man and a white woman. That shows that's a program. That's a program. Because they're not the only people in the world doing that. But why is that? When they do it, that's the main focus. Them white folk is still there. Them black people ain't kicking them white folk out of that like that.
Love your room. You can't leave tonight. Keeps on the floor.
Yeah, because that's more work for us. You know what I'm saying? So this is what has to be ingrained into us and our children. We are not the same. That's what's destroying our children. That's what's destroying our position or the ability to be somebody else. Because in the end, they always move in the finish line when we get there. Not only that, then you got these jokers that literally go into the tombs here in America, here in Mexico, here wherever, and they just literally go and block people out. Cut whole people out. Can you imagine going to somebody's ancestors' grave site and then you don't like the way that the pictures look, so you just start sculpting away how you want the pictures to look for the dead people? Who does that? And this is a known practice. This is called iconoclasm. This is called art restoration. They're restoring it. How you going to restore something that you wasn't even a blink of existence in at the time it was created? How you going to restore something you don't even understand? And why is it white people always want to restore some shit that they done destroyed us from having? From having naturally. It's a scam. And again, black folk is taking, you have black folk in America that know who's who, what's what. And they taking our people from here over there and then telling them that we, again, from over here, came from over there. Look at how great this place is and all that. Knowing the biggest pyramid in the world is right here in South America. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would they do that? Why would they create a circumstance where we can't identify who we are in the world without having somebody else coming in co-signing it? Nobody co-signs Polish people. They're just Polish. You know what I'm saying? So when Rome murders one of its own, I feel bad more for the baby, more for the daughter really than him. Honestly, if I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. You know what I'm saying? Now remember, the last tweet he put out, just like your man Eremias, there's always that last tweet, right? Always get that last word in. The last tweet he put out was this. Continuing to move the game forward. Or another way of saying that would be the marathon continues, right? Same sentiment, same energy. Forward, King James. Much respect, my brother. 33644. 3 and 3 is 6. 6 and 6 is 12. 1 and 2 is 3. 3 and 4 is 7. 7 and 4 is what? 11. 1 and 1 is 2. And him and his daughter went out, right? That's Rome. That's how Rome do what it do. Now he referred to him as King James, remember? Now look, remember the war was between the different Moorish houses of Europe and then them actually being expelled by their lighter skinned children who then pursued them over here with their Caucasian and African beasts of war and then destabilized the entire empire and then pursued the empire wherever we was at. Everybody got that, right? So when we look at James, though, again, they've been telling us he was a homosexual, he's this, he's that. No. James was framed by another dude for that because James was basically trying to bring about the reunification of the houses here because it was through James that Charles V was able to get into become the first European Moorish emperor to sit on the Inca throne. So what you was getting was the unification of certain Moors from Europa coming back into the banners of the Moors. Because remember George and the rest of them who was down with the House of Hanover. Hanover was Roman, yet they were Holy Roman and they had broken away from the fake Vatican that was set up in Italy that was backed by the Venetian oligarchy, who themselves began with degenerate carpetbaggers who dealt in human chattel slavery and who were using the Khazars as their beasts of burden. King James was the king of Great Britain, France, and Ireland. He was a black man, and King James Bible is named after him. James approved the 54 scholars who worked on the translation. Those 54 scholars were called the Shakespeare, or the Shakespeare and Company, where we get the Shakespeare Company from. 47 worked in groups of 6 in 3 locations for 7 years, comparing various English translations from the Geneva Bible. But remember, the Geneva Bible is the Bible that was there first, and that's the one that referred to all of the Asiatics as Moors. Islam? So the original version of the King James is the Geneva. So definitely get a copy of that. The original texts were in the original languages Hebrew and Greek, but we know that the Greek is really Macedonian and the Hebrew is really Phoenician. King James translation had significant influence on the English language and was widely accepted as a standard English Bible because of the project being overseen by King James and the Cam Precise, because they was trying to move him out and supplant James with the puppet monarchy, which they did. This is what ushered in the 100 Years' War and the 30 Years' War and all of that. And then all of these British nobles who were still Moors, right, based upon the union with George, all came over here because they was being persecuted for their religion, which was Islam. You see? So they came over here and mixed with their native Moorish brethren, which is why they made the first treaty, not with the Indians, but with the who? The Delaware Moors, right? Because when William Penn got here, those Moors were speaking the king's English, correct? And they were among the first converts to convert to the English version of Christianity, Islam, but they were Moors. And so they fell more in league with George and the European Moors than the Haudenosaunee Moors of the Greater Iroquois Confederacy. And this is when the problem started and the breakdown of the government over here. And then all the government buildings like this, you see what I'm saying? After the wars had to get repurposed and all of that. You need to get this book, Without Sanctuary. This book is the book that details all of the lynchings, but all of these lynchings were based on political and land grabs. All of the people, most of the people that was killing in these lynchings were landowners, were business owners, were the original title holders, the allodial landowners, the chiefs, the emperors. These were not just regular people just out here. These were the kings and the emperors and the queens and stuff that they had been lynching. We need a fact-finding force to be able to get this book and circle the pictures of these people and find who their descendants are today. The same way the Jews did with the Nazis and everybody else. We can do it. But we don't have no mechanism in the community to even think on that level. And that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. Yes, because these Moors want to be Indians. They want to be Africans. They want to go to Africa and live in peace while right next door in Libya, they selling black people on the auction block and cutting them open broad daylight in the street and taking their organs out. When you say that these people are Catholic, that and which they are, that means that they are all Jesuits. You understand? And the Jesuits are only loyal to the Pope. So any black Catholic, you see, is a Jesuit, loyal to the Pope. This is the Christ that the Pope walks on the shepherd's staff. So all other ones, you see some of them be white, but the ones that he holds is black. Because the Madonna they worship is black because they are worshiping our deaths. So these Catholic Moors, these Christian Moors really are all Romans. Because all of the founders of Rome are those ancient Sabaeans that came by way of India, settled in Ethiopia, kicked the original Turkana, original Liabelan Ethiopians out, and then moved the capital to Axum, and then established the Coptic version, which was the Macedonian Greek version, that was then adopted into the Roman canon. And then eventually Constantine, being one of these people, set that up. Okay? Therefore, the so-called, there really is no such thing as Ethiopian. That's why we can't be that. which is why the Abbasids broke away from all of that, because they were descendants from the original Liabellans. And they were descended from the original inhabitants that was there, that had the connection back to us through the Phoenicians. Which is why in the Circle 7 it says that Ethiopia was the demarcation line between the lands of the Father and the Son. They're worshiping our deaths. And they create theater to get us to sacrifice ourselves to them, when they have already been sacrificed. So they're already dead. So get that book Without Sanctuary. It'll be hard to go through or whatever. But that's the type of stuff that we need to understand, that wasn't just done based on lynching. It was based on land appropriation. It was based on the establishment of the Ku Klux Klan at the same time they established the citizenry of the United States in 1871, and it took over everything officially by 1867. Then they removed the act that Indians could be individual. Indians could only be seen as individuals, and they couldn't be seen as a group or a nation. And then eventually through the Racial Integrity Act and the Indian Citizenship Act, they all got brought under the 13th and 14th Amendment as well. That's why they get no respect. So the only true possessors, again, of the land are those that were already here when the land was in its proper form. Now, I'm gonna also prove to you that this was more, that these is all Moors as well. And that we wasn't dealing with dollars, we was dealing with Moorish money over here, right? This is going back to what I was talking to you about with us Mauritania and all of that, when they talk about the annexation of Texas in 1854 and all of the land belonging to the Moors and the Mauritanians. The 15th article is the merchant. Okay. The 16th article has been well rendered, meaning that it's been flipped to fit these people. In all the essential translations from 1786. What happened in 1786, Moors? That's right, treaty peace of friendship, right? So this is a direct correlation to that, which means that the 16th article of this whole annexation of Texas thing is directly related to the 16th article of that of the Treaty of Peace of Friendship, right? Because we're talking about the same people who are now just referring to themselves as Mexicans. But the words are not to be made slaves. You see that, Moore? But the words are not to be made slaves are not in the original. And the Mexican dollar is represented in Arabic by Royale only. Islam? So that means that the Mexican dollar in the treaty was originally represented by the Arabic Royale. And the Arabic Royale and the designations, they were not to be made slaves. This is the species of dollar that we're supposed to be using. And that translates into the American Constitution as what? Gold and silver, right? Where all the gold mines at? All the gold mines is in Mauritania, right? Texas and Arkansas and all that, right? Boom. Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. That's the form of government. That's us. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. You hear that? And that judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, guess who that is, and all the executive judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, which is the Confederation, which is our government, which was the government of Old Mexico, which is the Moors, shall be bound by oath or affirmation. That's what the Moors do, right? To support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. What does it also say? It says the 13th article is without any important difference from the translation of 1786. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Anybody see where we're going? Let's see. Is the statute at large? What's the difference in the 13th article? There's really none, because in order for them to adopt the whole thing, they had to adopt the article. In order for them to get Texas, they had to acknowledge the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, because it was the same thing. Because at the time, there was no Texas. You know what I'm saying? As all Moorish, old Mauritanian land, they were already acknowledged as such. Right? Now, this again is from the old congressional record. Now, you tell me if they know where's what. Now, they're talking about the war with Santa Anna. So again, what that also showed and proved, brothers and sisters, is that the treaties are the supreme law of the land, not the Constitution of the United States. So when Moors say that they're not party to the treaty, how can that not be when the people that the treaty involves is directly the Mauritanians or the Moorish peoples, i.e. the Moorish Americans? How can that not apply to you? That's the law. The treaty is the verification, and the Constitution is the enforcement agent for that treaty. Whereas everybody else that's not party to that treaty fall directly under the Constitution. But we were on both sides, right? We're the Almoracanos, meaning the Moors from the land, and the Moors of the greater empire, right? So look, this is them talking about Texas and all of that. After we read that whole thing about Texas being belonging to the Moors, this and that. Here we go. That breed is extinct. Oh, here we go. Which the Spanish, but I cannot yet see made way clear that the conclusion of either the independence of Texas or the capture of the military execution of Santa Anna will serve you from war with Mexico. Santa Anna was not one of a breed which Spanish America for the last 25 years has been a teeming mother. Soldiers of fortune who by the sword or the musket ball have risen to supreme power, and by the sword and the musket ball have fallen from it. That breed is not extinct. The very last intelligence from Peru tells of one who has fallen there as the Yoruba and the the Mana, and the Guerrero and Santa Ana have fallen in Mexico, the same soil which produced them and yet fertile to produce others. They produce themselves with nothing but the charge of the name and of the man. Your war, sir, is to be a war of races, the Anglo-Saxon American pitted against the Moorish, Spanish, Mexican American, a war between the northern and the southern halves of North America. The Paramagundi of Panama, are you prepared for, and the Paragamundi of Panama, are you prepared for such a war? And again, I ask, what will be your cause to such a war? Aggressions, conquest, and the reestablishment of slavery, where it has been abolished? In that war, sir, the banners of freedom will be the banners of Mexico, and your banners, I blush to speak, will be the banners of slavery. So, again, man, all arguments to the contrary of who is running shit and who is really in control and who is the Moors and who is all of that's dead, man. There's too much direct information as to who and what Mexico and all this place really was prior to all of this for these niggas to be out here still talking about that they slaves from Africa, okay? Or that Indians lived in anything other than wigwams. Moors lived in habitation, civilization, mound cities, temple cities, spectral cities. And then those cities evolved because there were still giants. We were still giants and all that over here. And those cities evolved into these things today that they're referring to as Tartarian architecture. And then those things, again, evolved. And then by the time of this situation happened, everything then fell. And then they started to repair and do everything over. He didn't say Spanish Moorish. He said this Anglo-Saxon American pitted against the Moorish Spanish Mexican American. There again, Moorish American being used synonymously in the congressional record to show who was the dominant factor of the time that this was taking place. So there is no argument. That's why you'll never see me talk to these people about nothing, because they don't understand that in the end, these people are dying because they're signing up with these contracts that lead them right back into the subjugation that they act like they're away from, because they're getting dollars. But the US dollars they're getting is not even the money they're supposed to be getting. They're supposed to be getting Mexican Arabic royales, gold pesos, basically, doubloons, dinars. That's what our people are supposed to get based on the treaty, in the Treaty of the Three Guarantees, because that's what they talk about in that treaty, as which directly connects to the Treaty of 1787, which then opened it up for these Europeans to have some sort of weight here. And then when they fell to their white proxy slaves, those slaves helped free the African ones that came with them, and then they all put all of us under subjugation, and then put the history that we all developed from them. So what they gonna say? How they gonna spin it now? How they gonna say, oh well, it's, you know, we still Indians, and how they gonna do that? How they gonna keep the lie going when it's already, we done already smashed it? Like, what else is there to say with that? That's why they hate the prophet, because he made it so clear. He just put it in a context that it's what it is. You can't go from this to this. That's a degeneration. That's a degeneration and an outright lie. But you can, if you have a willing participant to give up his title by marrying a daughter of the American Revolution, i.e., a nun of Rome. And then when you go, your estate go right back to them. Yeah, God, they want to do that. They want to be more said. Anybody that wants to do that wants to do that. Exactly. Because they scared of the advance more. This is their greatest fear. Because that means they go back to the Dark Ages. We keep putting Rome back to sleep. And they keep coming back through genetic grafting. That's why the Moors had to create a system to create a version of them to be used against them so we wouldn't be losing all the time. But that didn't last. That's why when you see pictures of the Moors with them, we always bathing them or teaching them, right? When you see the pictures of us, they always hanging us and shooting us and all of that. Because we are the threat. We are the landholders. We're the ancient ones. We're the ones in the feathers and the turbans. Beyond the Arabs and all that. Because that they don't even exist. All of that come out of Phoenicia. And all of that is ancient Atlantean, and we know that. This allegedly is another image of Montezuma. Exactly. His father was named El Camino. So when you see mummies and they be black, but they have like blonde hair on them, they just be gluing that on them. Like women glue the lace front on, they just be gluing them blonde hair on these mummies. The Gullah Geechee, all of them, all of that were just Moorish clans that today we would consider them pagan, but they were still Moors. You see what I'm saying? They were still the Bambarian way of life. This is the image of America, one of the emblems of America. Look at the architecture. Look at the Moorish dome, the Moorish archway. Right? Look at that and then look at this. Does this look like a hut to you? Look. See the turtle at the top? Why we never seen these pictures in grade school? All of these statues that you used to be seeing with the Moorish heads and all of that, those are all the stuff that was left when we had to get out. And they just kept as artifacts and tried to paint white and stuff like that. Look at all the Moors in the back. On elephants, the lions. This is your history. This is more science. Like I said, it's the same architecture because it's the same people. We just evolved it. Here again is proof of Charles V marrying into the Inca, and you see the change in the line from there. Because all the real European nobility is Moorish. All the way, we have proof all the way back from George the First. He was getting his children instructed by Moors from the Emirates of Cordoba in the lands of Andalusia. That's over here. That's why they sent people over here. That's why they was able to establish businesses over here. Wasn't Britain the first one to abolish slavery? I'm not talking about the pirate phase of Britain at the fall, after everything collapsed. I'm talking about when it happened, when we was running. You cannot be blamed for destroying the world and bringing the world out of the dark ages and bringing humanity out of destruction at the same time, okay? It's going to be one or the other. So all of these jokers that's melanated weren't running around with these dudes referring to themselves solely as Hebrews and not acknowledging a Moorish connection and trying to disprove Moors and what we not or whatever. These niggas have no scholarship. They have no nationality. They have no integrity. You understand? And they have no wherewithal for where they really come from, especially if they're mestizo type or whatever, because that means you're just really just a derivative of those so-called Moorish Spaniards that, again, had a tendency to rape Sabaean women, who in this Clock of Destiny were referred to by C.M. Bay as the Pantagonian blonde women, whether they was blonde or not. So as you can see, we're in the same area. In the Book of Mormon, when they talk about the battles between the Nehemites and the Lamathites, this is where it happened. Because they're talking about the wars that the Moors fought amongst themselves. So all of these guys are stateless, and all of them are moving towards the section of trying to recreate this devil by following the same archaic rites that our ancestors tried, but with no political power to assist them in this endeavor. And so the more prominent they are, the more they have to be bred with one of these in order to produce one of the other to not exist. So it wouldn't be so bad if it was like, okay, there's light skinned people, dark skinned people, and they all are seen as equal. No, the goal is to you be as light as possible and we get rid of everybody as dark. So that way it's only a certain beige type of people walking around, if anything. But we don't want excessively dark Moors, and specifically men and women who are ready to rear and raise families. And so episodic, century-spanning death cults have been established to make sure that this happens. So that way the Moors never rise. And that's why anybody that's in the Freemasonic order along the Greek or even closeted Western Egyptian Crowley influenced rites are Mormons, which means they're all crypto Jews, which means they're all draconians. And they're all subject to the same sacrifice that they put everybody else under, which is why they only work together. So much so that Kanye West reached out to the white guy, Danny McBride, to play him in his biopic. So why you even get mad at the white man when you got somebody that's constantly making you and your people look like buffoons, and we still support them? Once I seen homie in the mauve, all pink, which is really pink, but the pink suit, I knew something was activated. So it just turned out to be, Kobe. So again, I can't say that there was any direct involvement. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that all of the webs lead to the same results. So in the end, the empire is the only way out, in my opinion. Because it's the only thing that has never failed, and the only thing that, once unified, you know what I'm saying, can't really be quashed. And there's been many Moors that have come, Vercingetorix, uh, uh, Mohammed bin Said, the Mahdi, the Prophet, Nat Turner, you know, many different people that came and have consistently come to remind us that all is not lost. As we close, I'll show you what I mean about sloppy history. How is it that this guy, now one is just a rendering of what they say that he looked like, and we know that he was native to Angola, they say. This is Crispus Attucks, and this is Nick Biddle. He allegedly was the first to die in the American Revolution, the one that brought the white Anglo-Saxons into it in 1776. And he allegedly was the first man shot in the American Civil War. So if both men in both alleged wars who were killed were the first ones done and they were both Asiatic or native born to the land, what we're seeing is that this was something that was dealing between us, and these people came in way later. Understand? This is this coincidence of Jesus' mother being Mary, and then his wife or whoever was named Mary. Also, when we get into who founded or came from the original Confederacy, it was founded again by a Moor or Moors, who, after the fall of Granada, found way over here and cultivated land over the years and fell under what they call the Marrano community. These are the people who built all the Moorish cathedrals and so-called synagogues in Louisiana and the South. One of the richest ones was this guy whose name was Hayam Solomon. As you see, he was an Asiatic, lighter-skinned person, but he was a direct descendant from one of the last sheiks of Granada at the fall. And he personally bankrolled the original so-called Confederacy of what we call the Confederated Congress. He was one of the families that was down with that. Again, using Solomon or the Seal of Solomon. This is the Confederate flag at the top. These other things under were just the naval and battle flags. This is what would fly on the land. This is what would fly on the sea. This is actually an admiralty flag, you understand? So when they fly it on the land, they're actually having it on the wrong place. This showed that the Confederacy had a navy. This is also connected to the Gold Cross or the Red Cross of Osiris and the Cross of St. George, right? And then this is, again, the secondary and third Confederate flag before they fell. So if this is the one that you see the white folk flying, that means that this is the one that applied to them. You don't see them flying this. We fly this. This is also symbolic to the original Confederate Cherokee flag because this was the several states that they talk about. Also the flag of North Carolina, right? So if the white man was flying this, this shows and proves that he was under the Admiralty jurisdiction, you see, which is why he rebelled against it, which is why they called them the rebels, you see, because they rebelled against their own Confederacy, which was, they was all under us, under the so-called Indians. You understand? So the white man flying this is proving his lack of authority because he was under the Admiralty jurisdiction of the sea because he wasn't from the land. The people in the Confederacy that flew the flag was from the land. That was these people that was connected to these people and these people. Because they are the ones that had the ancient treaties and connection all the way back to Hano Bay and even before that. The foundation of all alphabet is the phonetics, right? Math and arithmetic aren't the same thing. So like I said, after everything fell, this is how it progressed and devolved. And here we are. So now at the behest of another unfortunate passing of the brother, we get the eve of this person's so-called impeachment, along with this so-called virus that's now running rampant through the world, allegedly. But either way, it doesn't matter. What matters is, I think, us understanding not to get too involved in stuff and praying for the truth above everything else. Because in the end, we really don't know. But what we do know based on what happened is that it's a continuous cycle in which these European families are seeking to usurp the original people by getting them to follow the ways of Europe and their gladiators who have sworn a secret against us and to keep us following them instead of looking at what really belongs to us. You know what I'm saying? This coat of arms is allegedly related to his family. Excuse me, this one. So that's why most of the people that's bigged up, that's why you know more about Harriet Tubman than you know of Black Hawk. This is why you know more of King Tut than you know of Hiawatha. This is why you know the 147 Confessions of Ma'at, but you don't know about the Great Law of Gyanashua. See what I'm saying? This is why you know about Ramses, but you don't know about Pakal Votan. See what I'm saying? So there's a need to disconnect us from what is native to us to adopt their way of doing it. And that's not our way, was what set the way for them to have a way. So we wasn't the one wearing the aprons and all of that. We was the one writing down how they supposed to do stuff. And until they get back to that, it's going to be this. So the 6-pointed star, so what's the significance between a 6-pointed star and a 5-pointed star? The 5-pointed star represents the female, the 6-pointed star represents the male. The original 48 star flag has 6 points, but it was then switched to 5 points when they went into the matriarchal. Regardless to what you think, it's in the matriarchal position. That's why they want Lizzo, who is acting as the goddess Taware, to represent this abundance, but veiling it to make it seem like she's on some Shiva steeds. But the ones that's under Shiva stick out their tongue all the time. The one that's under equestrian horse type magic, those are the ones that always stick they foot out like a horse. And then the ones that's into the like the diva type, Minerva type stuff, they're the ones that's always naked. So thank you guys for coming through. I hope we got some clarity as to what potentially is going on, inshallah. That was the Marhalika clan. The book of Zarathustra, that's what Nietzsche wrote. Then comes about Zarathustra, but that was his take on Zoroastrianism. You know, Zarathustra, Zathrustra. Just type in Nietzsche Zarathustra or whatever, it'll come up. He was another product of this age of Freemasons that were given that power to create false doctrines, and that's what he did. Yeah, the ones that became part of the European Union, the ones that converted to Christianity, the Delaware Moors or those Lenapes that converted to Christianity. There's a book called On the Saga Moors that gets into that. And another one called Seneca Possessed that gets into that. At one time, there was a longhouse that stretched all the way from the tip of Manhattan all the way to the end. So if you can imagine one giant structure, building, that went the entire length of the island, in which then there was almost like a canopy over the entire aspect of it. Look it up. That's how we was rolling. But that's when the giants and them lived there. Thus comes the Zarathustra, I believe. I mean, if you want to read it, it's a Nietzsche book, you know. He was an atheist who was in love with his sister. So he was one of them crazy ones like Darwin and Galton and the rest of them. Insane troglodytes. Yes, everyone that does not have melanin, what's called EU melanin now, anyone with RH factor that does not have melanin, like me and you specifically, has rhesus monkey DNA, which is Neanderthal DNA, or what's called Denisovian DNA. Seneca Possessed, and I don't remember the other one. I just said it though. Yeah. So again, I would say, you know, pray for the family, inshallah, and especially the girl. That's what I'm more sad for than anybody. Moors are sovereign, but a sovereign in law is actually a piece of gold. So anybody dealing with Moors who referring to themselves as sovereign citizens is not. It's not really dealing with actual fact. I don't know. It says Seneca Possessed and all hails. Oh, thus comes Zarathustra, and I think that was it. I don't remember saying another one. Well, that's a good sign for us. Nationals won the World Series. Anyone else? Islam. Thank you guys. Peace.